blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be disarmed, ice and fire.
Welcome back, Watchers Beyond the Wall. My name is Monica, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to a Song of Ice and Fire content, and a little bit of whatever is on my mind. Here, we deep dive and overanalyze re-watching shows and movies over and over again to understand what the writer is trying to tell us. Without further ado, brace yourselves for rewatch. In the annals of history, few epochs have been able to cast a shadow as formidable and awe-inspiring as the Age of Valyria. Long before the rise and fall of kingdoms and empires across Westeros and Essos, there stood a civilization unparalleled in the craft and mastery of magic and might. This was the era of the Valyrian Freehold, a dominion forged in the breath of dragonfire and sorcery.
As Westeros recovered from the long night, a new power was rising in Essos, with the Valyrians, who learned to tame dragons and make them the most fearsome weapon of war that the world ever saw. The tales the Valyrians told of themselves claimed they were descended from dragons and were kin to the ones they now controlled.
Where the sky was the canvas for a majestic flight of dragons, and the earth trembled at the feet of those who wielded the awesomest power. Nestled amongst the smoking mountains of the Valyrian peninsula, the Freehold was a beacon of innovation and ambition. The Valyrians, once humbled shepherds, discovered the secret of taming and riding dragons, creatures of both myth and terror.
I am Daenerys Stormborn, of House Targaryen, of the blood of old Valyria. I am the dragon's daughter.
With these magnificent beasts, they carved an empire that spanned continents, their reach expanding the farthest corners of the known world. Theirs was a society built on pillars of arcane knowledge, unparalleled craftsmanship, and a web of political ties and family ones. At the heart of the Golden Age, where Valyria's capital, a city of wonder and splendor, the towers were fused of black stone spirals that shape into the sky, adorned with the intricate carvings of tales of triumph and tragedy.
With the destruction of the Rhoynar, Valyria soon achieved complete domination of the western half of Essos, from the Narrow Sea to Slaver's Bay, and from the Summer Sea to the Shivering Sea. Slaves poured into the Freehold and were quickly dispatched beneath the 14 flames to mine the precious gold and silver the freeholders loved so well.
Rivers of melted lava ran through the street, harnessing the intricate plays of art and power. The Dragon Lord, families tied with immense wealth and influence, reigned with an iron grip, their power no man has ever trifled with, both revered and feared. Yet, the Age of Valyria was not mere an age of conquest and dominion. It was a time of unexplored cultural and economic flourishings. Scholars, sorcerers, diving into the mysteries of the unknown within the universe, unlocking secrets that would remain elusive for millennia. Art and literature, crafting, leaving behind a legacy that is both revered and endured by different civilizations that come and follow.
Valyria was the last ember, and Valyria is gone. The dragons are no more, the giants are dead, the children of the forest forgotten, with all their lore.
But with all great epochs, the Age of Valyria was destined to meet a cataclysmic end. The doom of Valyria, a catalysm of fire and ash, obliterated the Freehold in one single devastating day. What caused this apocalypse remains one of history's greatest endeavors, a tale whispered by the survivors and echoed in the nightmares of their descendants.
To this day, no one knows what caused the doom. Most say that it was a natural cataclysm, a catastrophic explosion caused by the eruption of all 14 flames together. Some septons, less wise, claim that the Valyrians brought the disaster on themselves for their promiscuous belief in 100 gods and more. And in their godlessness, they delve too deep and unleash the fires of the 7 hells on the Freehold.
The world's most mightiest Valyrian empire crumbled in ruins, leaving behind a world forever changed. The Age of Valyria stands as a testament to the zenith of human perception and the pillars edged of ambition. It is a saga of power and triumph, a dream flourishing in the ruins of Dragonfire. And of this legacy, even in the ruins, continues to shape the lives of destiny of the world. But before we talk about the end of Valyria, the doom, and the cataclysmic events that lead up to it, we must go back. We must discover what was there before. Rise to power and the fall of Ghis. The old empire of Ghis was one of the oldest known nations and cultures in the world. It reigned supreme over much of Essos. It founded a golden age predating its successors from the Valyrian Freehold by thousands of years.
The Harpy of Ghis, Dany thought. Old Ghis had fallen 5,000 years ago, if she remembered true, its legions shattered by the might of young Valyria, its brick walls pulled down, its streets and buildings turned to ash and cinder by dragon flame, its very fields sown with salt, sulphur, and skulls.
The old empire ascended from the ancient cities of Old Ghis, founded by Grozdan the Great, renewed for the highly advanced lockstep legions of free soldiers. Old Ghis boasted a military force nearly impenetrable on the battlefield. The city's archetype was characterized in imposing brick towers and pyramids, enduring through the labor of slaves.
Old Ghis and its army proceeded to colonize its surroundings, then pressing on to subjugate its neighbors. Thus was the first empire born, and for centuries it reigned supreme.
As the Gisantine hills yielded ample supply of copper and bronze for weapons, what now remains of the once proud empire of Ghis is a putrid thing, a few cities clinging like sores to Slaver's Bay, and another that pretends to be Old Ghis come again. Writings of Yondel. Government of Old Ghis. As Old Ghis expanded its dominion, it embarked on campaigns of subterfuge, colonizing nearby territories and exemplifying its reach southward to Silur Isles and the Byzantine Isles, establishing penal colonies such as Golrosh, Zanafa, and Golgrin. The Giscari Empire expanded its influence across the region.
Was rooted in Old Ghis, a city built upon slavery. The legendary founder of the city, Grozdan the Great, remains so revered that men of the slaver families are still often given his name.
The government structure surrounding the old empire remains shrouded in mystery. 5 millennia after its collapse, titles such as Senna of Old Ghis, Ottod of the Old Empire, held by figures like Hazan Nozodorax, suggest a council of 8 figures and a regional governor under an empire or a military rank. However, the true nature of these titles and the empire ruling system remains uncertain. The modern of Giscari people, descended of various races, unite by the empire's influence and downfall, now inhabit a vast area of Slaver's Bay, west of the Gullet of Grief. Their distant features include, but is not limited to, darker auburn skin, wiry hair, often dressed within highlights of red, adorned in copper sandals and discs, dressed in linens and tunics. They favor skirts and sandals, while a customary dish within the people is dog, octopus stew, and duck eggs. Sadly, through the centuries, the Giscari language, culture, and religious relics faded.
The gods of Ghis were dead, and so too its people. These Astapori were Mongols, Sir Jorah said. Even the Giscari tongue was largely forgotten. The slave cities spoke the high Valyrian of their conquerors, or what they had made of it.
By the language of their conquerors, Valyria. Today, most Ghis speak a dialect of Old Valyria, with runics of their once grand empire shrouded in rubbly ruins of walls, stepped empires, and harpy statues. Although echoes of Old Ghis still are in military operations, in particular within the Unsullied, combat practicing are still in the liege of Old Ghis. Training of slave soldiers are in the embodiment of the fighting style we saw previously. Similarly, the Free Iron Liege of New Ghis draws inspiration for the backlocked liege of the past. The harpy amongst the slave cities, adored with silver coins, and serve as a symbol of their authority. Askapor, Yunkai, and Marine continue this tradition of slave training, reflected in the western expanse across generations, much like the predecessors of the days of the Old Empire. Ours is the blood of ancient Ghis, whose empire was old when Valyria was yet a sprawling child. Grasden Morarak, A Storm of Swords, Chapter 42, Wars between the Ghis Empire and Valyrian Freehold.
The colossal pyramids and temples and homes were given over to dragon flame. The fields were sown with salt, lime, and skulls. Many of the Ghis were slain, and still others were enslaved and died labouring for their conquerors. Thus the Ghis became but another part of the new Valyrian Empire, and in time they forgot the tongue that Grasden spoke, learning instead High Valyrian. So do empires end, and others arise.
The Ghis War erupted when the Valyrians had discovered dragons and descended to power, becoming coveted adversaries for the Ghis. Engaging in 5 major conflicts, the Ghis fought swiftly, but ultimately succumbed to the might of Valyria.
It was during the 5th and final war that the Freehold chose to make sure there would be no 6th war. The ancient brick walls of Old Ghis, first erected by Grasdan the Great in ancient days, were razed.
In the 5th Ghis War, the Valyrians unleashed their dragons, dismantling Old Ghis and returning its pyramids to ashes. The Valyrians, in its final impact of conquest, destroyed the lands, rendering them uninhabitable amidst salt and sulfur. Following the annihilation of Old Ghis, the Valyrian Empire emerged triumphant, absorbing the remaining of the Ghis civilization. The Valyrians, inspired by Ghis practice, adopted slavery and embodiment in their triumphant over the years. Western expansion. The expansion of the Valyrian Freehold into the Western territories saw the acquisition of vast numbers of slaves for conquesting land.
Once the Ghis Wars had ended, the dragon lords of Valyria turned their gaze toward the west, where the growth of Valyrian power brought the Freehold and its colonies into conflict with the peoples of the Rhoyne.
Those slaves were initially thawed out, seeking wealth from the 14 Flames, constructing monumental cities and developing extinguished road networks connecting back to Valyria. Slave system. Slavery, a system where individuals are treated as commissionaries for labor and trade, where this is practiced in Essos, it was outlawed in Westeros. This becomes a focal point in A Storm of Swords, although it is mentioned in A Game of Thrones briefly.
Without slaves, Meereen had little to offer traders. Copper was plentiful in the Ghis hills, but the metal was not as valuable as it had been when bronze ruled the world. The cedars that had once grown tall along the coast grew no more, felled by the axes of the old empire or consumed by dragonfire when Ghis made war against Valyria.
Inspired by the predecessors of the Ghis Empire built on slaves, the rise of Valyrian Freehold sought out to replicate this feudal system, utilizing thousands of slaves from various nations across Essos. They mined precious metals beneath the volcanic peaks.
The Valyrians learn one deplorable thing from the Giscari slavery. The Giscari, whom they conquered, were the first to be thus enslaved, but not the last. The burning mountains of the 14 Flames were rich with ore, and the Valyrians hungered for it. Copper and tin for the bronze of their weapons and monuments, later iron for the steel of their legendary blades, and always gold and silver to pay for it all.
While only the most wretched endured the harsh conditions, the mines beneath the 14 Flames were notorious for being brutal, where countless slaves toiled, perished, and sometimes rebelled against their Valyrian overlords. However, the Freehold's master of sorcery and military might secured the oppression of such uprisings.
None can say how many perished, toiling, in the Valyrian mines, but the number was so large as to surely defy comprehension.
While periods of peace saw them breeding slaves for their workforce, legend holds that the first faceless man emerged within the confines of Old Valyria, driving by a desperation and inspired through the ends of suffering of one's oppressor, known as the Masters. Obedient through the prayers of numerous gods, he come to the realization that there is only one, and the key role that he played in the justice of death, Rhoynar and Croyan. For years, the Valyrians coexisted in peace with the Rhoynar civilization along the Rhoyne, to the west of the Valyrian peninsula. Instead of forcing their expanse on the Rhoyne, the Valyrians set their sights across the narrow sea, waging war with the Andals of Andalos. In response to this threat, and rather being enslaved, the Andals fled across the narrow sea and invaded Westeros. Now overwhelming the remaining Andals of eastern Essos, the Valyrians established penal colonies westwards of the peninsula.
A few such as the Rhoynar lasted against the tide for centuries, or even millennia. The Rhoynar, who founded great cities along the Rhoyne, were said to be the first to learn the art of iron-making. Also, the Confederation of Cities, later called the Kingdom of Sarnor, survived the Valyrian expansion thanks to the great plain that separated one from the other. Only for that plain and the people who occupied it, the Dothraki horse lords, to be the source of Sarnor's downfall after the Doom.
During their prime, the Rhoyne thrived in city-states along the vast Rhoyne, boasting illustrious settlements like Anoin, Croyn, and Nostar.
In the Velvet Hills, with its groves and waterfalls, Nysar, the city of fountains, alive with song, Arnoi on the Coin, with its halls of green marble, pale Sarmel of the flowers, sea-girt Sahoy with its canals and salt-water gardens, and Croyen, greatest of all, the festival city with its great palace of love.
Rivaling the grandeur of the ancient old empire of Ghis, renewed for their master of water magic and technological advancements, the Rhoyne the art of working iron. The Rhoynar left an indisputable imprint of the culture within Westeros, as it's widely believed and sought after that the Rhoynar are in fact the ones that taught the Andals using iron and bronze for weaponry, making the Bronze Age obsolete. The Croyn, once a marble of water streets and golden houses, now lie in ruin. Its former splendor faded into the sunset, statues, temples, and grandeur amongst the shadow ruins of what was marble staircases. Amongst the ruins stands a tragic rename, Palace of Sorrow, once known as the Palace of Peace. And the haunting Bridge of Dreams is now where stone men roam and walk. Legend tells of Garen imprisoned in a golden cage amidst Volantis and Valyria, who called upon Mother Roin to release her wrath upon the invaders. The river rose and fell, drowning the oppressors, yet their spirits, fallen dragon riders, are said to still linger the waters. That creates the veil between the cities and the mist that guards.
Some chroniclers insist that the fires burned so hot that the very waters of the river boiled and turned to steam. Garen the Great was captured alive and made to watch his people suffer for their defiance. His warriors were shown no such mercy.
Yet the spirits of the fallen dragon lords are said to have still lingered within the icy waters, their chilling breath casting a mist throughout the city of Atlantis. Today, the sorrows are veiled in mist, haunted by stone men afflicted by grayscale. Some believe underway the siege are condemned and manipulated by the dragon lords lost to history. Sunken structures pose dangers to passing vessels, while travelers are at risk for delusion, madness, infection of grayscale. Lawlessness prevails above the sorrows and is risk for pirates through the ruins of Croyne remaining untouched. Southwards, Volantines guard the river from pirates and merchants displaying the rich bloodlust of the stone men. The Rhoynish Wars were a series of wars fought between the city-states of the Rhoyne and the colonies of Valyria's Freehold between 950 BC and 700 BC. They were described in Baldric's History of the Rhoynish Wars. The conflict endured almost a millennia ago, where 3 dragon lords from the Valyria Freehold partnered with Volantis to obliterate the Rhoynish port of Sunhoy of the Sun Sea. In retaliation, the Rhoyne are united under Prince Galrin of the Croyne, a renowned figure along the Rhoyne who momentarily shocked the foundation of Valyria.
So long as the army remained beside Mother Roin, the prince declared, they need not fear the dragons of Valyria. Their own water wizards would protect them against the fires of the Freehold. Garen divided his enormous host into 3 parts. One marched down the east bank of the Rhoyne, one along the west, whilst a huge fleet of war galleys kept pace on the waters between, sweeping the river clean of enemy ships.
Amassing a formidable army at Croyne, Prince Garen rallied the Rhoynar to challenge the mighty threat of Valyrian's Freehold. Baldric's History of the Rhoynish Wars recount Garen's command of nearly 250,000 soldiers marching on Valyria's doorstep, promising them protection from the Valyrian dragons through the power of the Rhoynish water wizards. Garen earned the moniker of the Great following victories at Saharis, Valisad, and Volanthiris, leading his army of nearly 250,000. Garld granted over the triumph of Selharis, Valander, and Volanthiri, while Rhoynish water wizards vanquished 3 dragons. Alarmed, the Voluntaries sought aid from Valyria, dispatching 300 dragons. The Valyrians reclaimed and destroyed Geralt's forces with their dragons, laying waste to his armies. Legend recounts the grim fate of Garen, ensnared in a golden cage from the men of Volantis and Valyria, witnessing the cruel fate of his people from the Croyne and witnessing their enslavement. In a desperate plea of Mother Roin, he begs and pleads for vengeance, Garen pleading to his captors as they jade him and laugh at them. Yet, that very night, the Valyrian waters rose out of sea level, drowning the invaders. Moreover, a dense fog rose and filled Rhoyne, inflicting the Valyrian conquerors with grayscale. Valyrian Imperialism. Ancient Valyria was a civilization of humble shepherd, once discovering dragons within the 14 flames of a ring of volcanoes on the Valyrian peninsula. Although Valyrian stories claim that dragons originated in their lands, other tales say they came from Ashai, claiming the beasts were brought to Valyria from the Shadowlands. Valyrians renewed for their distinct appearance, with silver gold hair and violet eyes, posing a beautiful and striking ethereal beauty bordering on almost inhuman. Their physical traits range from white to silver gold to blonde hair, and deep lilac to purple deep eyes, and sometimes pale blue eyes.
Aegon had two true-born siblings, an elder sister, Visenya, and a younger sister, Rhaenys. It had long been the custom amongst the dragon lords of Valyria to wed brother to sister, to keep the bloodlines pure. But Aegon took both his sisters to bride.
The rare species of Luminor dwell in the forest of Qua, known as the Little Valyrian, share these unique traits. Remnants of Valyria lineage lingers in Lys, while even the common folk have a similar attributes of the ancient dragon lords. Additionally, but not related to Valyria, members of House Dane and other ancient houses within Westeros bear violet eyes and other attributes that relate to the Dragon Lords. At the pinnacle of its influence, the Freehold of Valyria defied common structure of monarchy or empire.
At its apex, Valyria was the greatest city in the known world, the center of civilization. Within its shining walls, 200 rival houses vied for power and glory, in court and council, rising and falling in an endless, subtle, off-savage struggle for dominance.
Lacking a single king or emperor. Instead, the governance was displaced among all freeholders, landowners of freedom status who allied a dischoosing and decision-making within a notable process. However, in reality, power was maintainedly constructed within the hands of the Lord's freeholder, established within notable families of substantial wealth, aristocratic lineage, and formidable sorcerer powers. Among these privileged families, dubbed as dragon lords, were 40 established houses renowned for their mastery of dragonriding and control in battle. Notably, the House Targaryen was encountered and included within the influential dragon houses. Valyrians boasted a remarkable proficiency in stone manipulation, often enduring and technologically advanced work within a pottery-like structure. As you're able to shape clay, they used fire and magic to shape stone. Although much of this technology and knowledge has been lost through the centuries, Valyrians possessed a formidable magic capability of liquefying and molding stones according to their splendor. This craft was taken up upon craftsmanship, and it's evident in their towers and pyramids, shaping Valyrian roads, also known as dragon roads, as well as iconic structures like Dragonstone Castle and the imposing Black Wall and Long Bridge of Volantis. Valyrian magic. All Valyrian magic was rooted in blood and fire.
Visenya, eldest of the 3 siblings, was as much a warrior as Aegon himself, as comfortable in ringmail as in silk. She carried the Valyrian longsword Dark Sister, and was skilled in its use, having trained beside her brother since childhood. Though possessed of the silver gold hair and purple eyes of Valyria, hers was a harsh, austere beauty. Even those who loved her best found Visenya stern, serious, unforgiving, and some said that she played with poisons and dabbled in dark sorceries.
It is said that they could set dragon glass candles to burn with a strange bright light. With obsidian candles, they could see across vast distances, look into a man's mind, and speak to each other even though they were half a world apart. It is often said that the old wizards of Valyria did not cut or sculpt the clay, but rather worked it with fire and magic as one would work clay. The people of Valyria were strong in magic and used this as a powerful weapon with their dragons to conjure and implore their armies, using this to conquer most of Western Essos. Dragons were controlled by whip, dragon horns, and sorcerers. In the flesh pits of Glushid, Valyrian blood mages maimed animals to enslave women to bring forth half-human creatures amongst the pits. Wizards of the Rhoyne used water magic against the Valyrian Freehold during the Rhoynish Wars. It is also believed that magic died out of the west and in the lands of Always Summer after the doom of Valyria, except there was attempts to restore the magic and redo the storms and redo the dragons that laid in there, but all attempts had failed until Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons hatched. Dragons of old Valyria.
They were terrifying. Extraordinary. They filled people with wonder and awe.
The Valyrians tamed dragons with magic, taught by the vanished people of the Shadowlands of Ashai according to the people of Ashai, and mastered the technique of raising and taming the dragons into indestructible weapons of war. Dragons are mythical creatures capable of flight and breathing fire. Once believed to be extinct for nearly a century and a half, they were remembered only with the skeletal remains and fossilized dragon eggs.
Only for what I found when I rode into the throne room that day, Ned said. Aerys was dead on the floor, drowned in his own blood. His dragon skull stared down from the walls.
However, the resurgence of dragons is capable within the chronological main series of A Song of Ice and Fire, with Daenerys Targaryen hatching her 3 petrified dragon eggs.
The other 2 pulled away from her breasts and added their voices to the call, translucent wings unfolding and stirring the air. And for the first time, in hundreds of years, the night came alive with the music of dragons.
Newly born dragons are referred to as hatchlings, while those yet not fully grown are called drakes. Dragons that roam freely without a bond or a rider is known as a wild dragon, and those who are separated from their riders are called castle dragons. These scaled reptilian beings possess only 4 limbs, 2 wings, and 2 hind legs, functioning akin to 4-limbed similar to bats and pterosaurs.
The dragons craned their necks around, gazing at them with burning eyes. Viserion had shattered one chain and melted the others. He clung to the roof of the pit like some huge white bat, his claws dug deep into the burnt and crumbling bricks. Rhaegal, still chained, was gnawing on the carcass of a bull. The bones on the floor of the pit were deeper than the last time she had been down here, and the walls and floors were black and grey, more ash than brick. They would not hold much longer.
This discrepancy with typical 6-limbed dragons was made by the decision of George R. Martin due to technological advancements and how evolution works as a whole. Dragons boast with strong jaws, sharp teeth, and claws amongst their leathery wings, long neck, tail, and horn. As hatchlings, dragons are capable of being the size of cats, but there Their continuous growth throughout their life depends on significant and numerous freedoms.
Beware, the woman in the red lacquer mask said. Of whom? Of all. They shall come day and night to see the wonder that has been born again into the world, and when they see, they shall lust, for dragons are fire made flesh, and fire is power.
Dragons, allowed to roam freely and stretch their wingspan, can double within a half a year to 20 feet. However, if they are confined in captivity, such as the Targaryen dragons housed in the dragon pit, cannot reach this same size. Significantly, a dragon's size does not necessarily correlate with one's age. Some younger dragons have been known to surpass older ones within size. In Martin's world, a dragon's color does not represent its nature. Dragon's bones are black due to the iron deficiency within the polished skull, representing a onyx of teeth and various daggers within black diamond artifacts of the Targaryen dragon heads. Ancient dragons. In Bath's untold history, various legends are sprinkled throughout the world of the origins of dragons. According to Valyrian lore, dragons emerged through the volcanoes of the 14th flame of Valyrian's peninsula. In Koth, tales suggest that dragons originated from a second moon.
Have you ever seen a dragon?
Dragon gone, Khaleesi? No dragon. Brave men killed them.
The moon?
Khaleesi, that once there were 2 moons in the sky, and they drank the sun's fire.
Moon is no egg. Moon is goddess.
Scaling by the sun, it cracked open to reveal a multitude of dragons. Other accords suppose that dragons came from the Shadowlands of Ashai, or the island of the Jade Sea. Ancient tales from Ashai mention an unknown set of people who first tamed dragons, bringing forth and teaching the Valyrians, sharing their knowledge, and later disappearing within history. Bath theorizes that dragons may have been created through blood magic, and the Valyrian sorcerers possibly used wages and fireworms.
The dragon has 3 heads, Dany said, when they were on the final flight. My marriage need not be the end of all your hopes. I know why you're here. For you, said Quentyn, all awkward gallantry. No, said Dany, for fire and blood.
With ancient dragon bones discovered as far north as Ide and south as the Drungle of Sigardi, like Sor Galamon of Morn, Bonecracker, Sor Willamar of the Mirror Shield, and Davos the Dragon Slayer, who have said to face off with these ferocious beasts. Even Winterfell's hot springs are renowned for their warmth from the breath of a dragon. Beyond Westeros, myth of dragon, demons, and other creatures dwelling within cliffside rocks in Ashai are legendary. Legend also speaks of sea dragons in the Sunset Sea and ice dragons in the Shivering Sea, though scholars speculate on their existence. Naga, the legendary sea dragon, is said to be her first of her kind. Dragons boast a significantly longer lifespan than humans, yet the maximizing nature of their longevity proves challenging to the many battles they face.
I never thought that dragons would exist again. No one did. The people who follow you know that you made something impossible happen. Maybe that helps them believe that you can make other impossible things happen. Build a world that's different from the shit one they've always known. But if you use them to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different. You're just more of the same.
Balerion, the successor and eventually founder of the Targaryen dragons, exists predating the arrival of the Targaryen noble factions within Westeros, and incurs the last dragon known to Valyria. Balerion succumbed to old age in 94 AC under the reign of King Jaehaerys Targaryen. Balerion's demise at nearly 207 years old remains a rare instance of a dragon perishing from an old age, leaving the uncertainty of a typical dragon's lifespan. The wild dragon, named Cannibal,
all I know of dragons is what my brother told me when I was a girl, and some I read in books, but it is said that even Aegon the Conqueror never dared mount Vhagar or Meraxes, nor did his sisters ride Balerion the Black Dread. Dragons live longer than men, some for hundreds of years, so Balerion had other riders after Aegon died, but no rider ever flew two dragons.
Rumors to have settled on Dragonstone predating the Targaryen arrival, meaning that he had lived at least 250 years during the reign of Aegon III, Rhaenyra's son. Despite their formidable stature, most dragons who are bred for war, and thus die in such a tragic end. And stealing of the dragons falling death to prey, including the injuries of Meraxes, slayed by a scorpion bolt through the eye. Tessarion, mercilessly killed with 3 arrows through his eyes and suffered grievous injuries. It's also worth noting, young dragons have softer skin rather than fully mature dragons that have thicker skin. It's easier to kill a dragon clawing at their belly and torso area, especially when it's their first flight. Balerion himself had scar wounds and wounds from his return to a previous flight that is predicted to be in Valyria, including significant scarring and rips through his chest that the nature mirrors that of a dragon conflict. Dragons, intelligent creatures, can be trained as battle mounts and respond to vocal commands in High Valyrian, though this complicated training is carefully instructed to prevent cataclysmic events. Valyrian dragon lords' families are known to marry through the blood ties to secure a successful dragon rider.
A crueler woman might have laughed at him, but Dany squeezed his hand and said,
"They frighten me as well. There is no shame in that. My children have grown wild and angry in the dark."
Viserion hissed again. Smoke rose between his teeth, and deep down in his throat they could see gold fire churning. They are fearsome creatures."
"They are dragons, Quentin."
Dany stood on her toes and kissed him lightly, once on each cheek.
"And so am I."
Yet, Valyrian heritage is not only granted a dragon. You must have the true blood of the dragon. This is shown in A Dance of a Dragons, where some bastards are unable to claim a dragon. Once bonded with a rider, a dragon remains loyal, only claiming their rider as a mount while alive. However, a rider's death opens the possibility for a new bond, a new rider. Dragons with prior riders are easier to bond with rather than wild dragons. Dragon riders typically use a special saddle secured by chains and holding them safely within the saddle with belts. However, some dragon riders, like Daenerys Targaryen, don't have the luxury of a saddle and use their arms and legs, gripping the dragon's back or neck.